AEW president Tony Khan was interviewed on Talk Is Jericho back in February 2019. It was little over a month after AEW's launch press conference in Jacksonville, and Khan, a lifelong wrestling fan, outlined a vision for the future built on honesty and integrity. He said he wanted the company to be known for delivering on promises. He wanted to be able to say that he'd never lied to anyone. Through Khan, the Elite, and other representatives, AEW made a lot of promises in 2019, and now's probably a fair time to judge how successful they've been in keeping them. Yes, this is still an infant company, but after almost 20 episodes of Dynamite and 5 pay-per-views, that's almost certainly enough of a sample size to gauge their honesty. Building trust with your audience is critical. Fans need to know that the time and effort put into following a promotion isn't going to waste. Now, Khan, to his credit, seems to recognize this, but while AEW has been successful in fulfilling loads and loads of early promises, they have been found wanting in other departments. This honest appraisal of AEW's Year 1 vows will be conducted as objectively as possible, so let's do it. I'm Andy for What Culture Wrestling, and here are 7 promises AEW have made since launching, but haven't kept. Number 7. Oriental Wrestling Entertainment. At the January press conference, AEW's executive vice presidents made several promises relating to working with other companies, one of which came from Matt Jackson. I have some friends in China. These guys are doing some of the most gifted wrestling moves I have ever seen in my life, he said, confirming a link with the emerging Oriental Wrestling Entertainment Company and adding that fans were going to fall in love with these wrestlers when they saw them. Dragon Gate legend CIMA and his Strong Hearts group were mentioned by name. Now, to be fair, this is one part of the promise that AEW has lived up to, with CIMA, El Lindaman, and T-Hawk making semi-regular appearances. Regardless, not one performer native to the Chinese promotion has crossed over. Now, on the other hand, guys like SoCal Uncensored and Kenny Omega have gone in the opposite direction and appeared on OWE shows, so that shows that the working relationship does exist. And maybe, with CIMA still a key figure in OWE's growth, there's a chance this could be expanded upon. But at the moment, how can AEW fans fall in love with wrestlers they've literally never seen? Number 6. CODY'S roster claims. In August 2019, 2 months before Dynamite had even debuted, Cody tweeted the following in response to a fan who'd commented on the abundance of smaller wrestlers on the AEW roster. He said, "We've revealed about 40% of the roster. Sometimes it's better to let the painter paint and then judge the picture." Now instantly, this sounded very exciting. The AEW roster wasn't quite what it is today, but the promotion had already confirmed 49 signings up to that point. This comprising just 40% of the talent pool would mean they'd actually signed over 100 active wrestlers, which, wow. Now, of course, this would have been far too many for a company with only 2 hours of weekly network TV, but it got fans hyped and excited about a bunch of new signing announcements that never came. At least Cody acknowledged this mistake a few months later. He said, "I think that the number comes from the fact that I didn't go to college and I'm not good at math," he told the media. "Honestly, we have a lot of the roster left. I don't know if I was on the nose with my 40%. While the roster has expanded since then, we're talking about a handful of names here and there, a Wardlow over here and a Jake Hager over there. Certainly not like 60 new wrestlers." Number 5. The JOSHI'S equal WCW's Cruiserweights. AEW fans were led to believe that the women's division would be handled like the old WCW Cruiserweights, specifically with regards to the incoming Joshi wrestlers from Japan and how they'd be integrated. This promise was most notably made by Tony Khan on Wade Keller's Pro Wrestling podcast just before Dynamite's debut. So what did Tony mean by this comparison? Well, one would assume an awesome all-action division, a unique selling point, and a surefire source of great in-ring action every single week, with the appeal of catching overseas performers that American audiences wouldn't otherwise see without doing some serious digging. But things haven't panned out that way. Yeah, Riho is the champion, and sure, Hikaru Shida is a full-time roster member, but the Joshi wrestlers haven't been particularly well utilized elsewhere. Emi Sakura was an underwhelming title challenger. Yuka Sakazaki vanished after catching the eye last summer, while Aja Kong, Ryo Mizunami, and Shoko Nakajima have worked just one match each. That's far from the talent share we were led to expect in 2019, and certainly nowhere close to WCW's Cruiserweights. Perhaps AEW has just found working with these wrestlers harder than they thought. They do have commitments in Japan after all, and that will undoubtedly cause scheduling issues. But their utilization has been underwhelming so far. Here's hoping we get to see more from these talented Japanese grapplers in 2020. Number 4. No ridiculous storylines. Another one from Tony's appearance on Wade Keller's podcast. This promise saw the AEW president note that while the company's storylines wouldn't be lacking in drama, they'd stem from what happens in the ring, personal issues, and grudges. They'd be a lot less focused on what he called preposterous, ridiculous angles, which must have been music to the ears of fans sick of these things in other companies. But while the bulk of AEW's biggest storylines do fit this remit, you don't have to look far for examples that don't. I'm talking about the Dark Order, whose vignettes were immaculate but have been dragged down by the rest of their presentation, with the goofy cult languishing from an ice-cold debut and that disastrous angle on the 18th of December. The Nightmare Collective's spooky nonsense is the biggest blight on Dynamite at the moment. Chris Statlander, a tremendous wrestler, is playing a bloody alien on national TV. And while they vary in quality, I for one kinda like the Butcher and the Blade in their shtick, they certainly don't fit the product that was initially promised. Number 3. Free live TV in the UK. The rollout of AEW's UK TV deal wasn't well handled. Tony Khan originally trumpeted a deal with, and I quote, the best TV partner we could have chosen. In May, he told comedian Jack Whitehall that AEW would air on ITV4, a free-to-air channel in the UK broadcasting to more than 27 million homes. A legitimately huge agreement, provided it had been struck. But the version that was announced to the public in September was much different. It began with a tweet from @ITV Wrestling stating that while Dynamite would be on ITV4, it wouldn't be live. The full 2-hour show would go down on Sunday mornings, 4 days after airing in the US, and would be followed by condensed highlights on Mondays. Now, understandably, the reaction was one of immediate widespread disappointment, prompting Khan to follow up by announcing that Dynamite would also be available on FITE TV for a fee. ITV now endeavour to upload Dynamite to their ITV Hub streaming platform within 48 hours of it airing in the US, but they regularly miss the mark. Number 2. Focused Women's Wrestling. In Jacksonville, Brandi Rhodes announced big plans for the women's division, as well as promising that pay would be determined by card position and popularity, not gender. She promised a strong division comprised of the best wrestlers in the world, and then introduced Britt Baker as the first proper signing and presumably a future ace of the scene. But things haven't worked out as Rhodes promised. Now, there's plenty of talent on AEW's women's roster. I mean, Riho, Hikaru Shida, and Shanna are tremendous workers. Britt Baker, Big Swole, Nyla Rose, and Sadie Gibbs are packed with potential, and Awesome Kong is a big, marketable name. The wrestlers themselves are mostly fine, and certainly enough to form a solid three-dimensional division, but best in the world? No. Definitely not. Presentation is the real issue here. Riho, the reigning champion, is rarely on Dynamite, her Japanese commitments causing scheduling nightmares. The Nightmare Collective of Brandi, Mel, and Kong is the hokiest act in America. Performers are rarely granted more than 1 or 2 weekly match and segment slots. Promo time is extremely rare, character development barely exists, and fans have been given few reasons to invest in these wrestlers and their journeys. A major reboot is sorely needed. Having a lackluster women's division in 2020 doesn't cut it, particularly when you consider how well AEW's Wednesday night competition is faring in this lane. Number 1. The Real Sport Feel. The so-called Real Sport Feel, trumpeted by AEW officials throughout 2019, has come in for boatloads of criticism over the past 13 months, and really, understandably so. While the company has been successful in hitting some aspects of this, let's say the win-loss records, the booking mechanisms, the presentation of guys like Cody and Chris Jericho as prize fighters, These things are awesome and they definitely help the product feel more like sport than sports entertainment. But, unfortunately, there's a lot undermining this. An act like the Dark Order can't exist in a real sport. Tag rules are treated with such flippancy that they may as well not exist. Referees and other officials are regularly undermined or made to look foolish. Bruisers like Jake Hager and Wardlow, who you'd fancy to wreck most of the roster in a real combat sports environment, well, they haven't even wrestled yet. The irony of the situation is that while AEW made this promise in their quest for differentiation, the framework over in NXT is actually far closer to a real sport feel than AEW's is at the moment. Meanwhile, over the Pacific, New Japan continues to dwarf both. So that's our list, but what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Once you've done that, you can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE and myself at Andy H. Murray. Bye!